All right, so welcome to week 7. The initial activity was to draw this floor plan based on the dimensions that are given for the different windows, um, wall lengths between windows and doors for this little 40 by 20 foot. Um, I don't know, we'll call it a commercial office space of some type. So what I want to do now is continue on what we learned last week, which was looking at elevation views. So last week we looked at elevation views for all 4 walls, and we looked at drawing them utilizing our floor plan and creating some elevations and utilizing a story pole to make our elevation references for our windows and our doors. And then the last but not least, again, all of the dimensions we looked at last week were interior dimensions, or sorry, not dimensions, interior elevations, right? All of them would be shown as if you were standing inside the building looking at one of the walls. So this week, what we're going to do is take a look at the other aspect of elevations, which is going to be exterior elevations, right? So that would be if I was standing out where my mouse is, looking towards the center of the building. Same thing on the east, south, and west sides, right? So it's very similar to what we did last week. A lot of the things are going to be the same, and that's fine. Again, we're just making elevation drawings. It's not rocket science. We're going to start off by drawing an elevation that's 10 feet tall, 40 feet wide, right? Kind of same thing we did last week. I don't know exactly what our dimensions were. Doesn't matter. This week, we're going to utilize a story pole a little bit more efficiently. Last week, we built one in all of our elevations, and they were utilized for a window or a door. And it was useful. It got things in the right spot, but it wasn't as useful as if you had 7 or 8 windows lined up across and could use that as a header or a window seal or a footer or whatever, right? So that's what we're going to do today. So I'd like to start off by going ahead. I just like to copy this just because I don't want to get rid of the original. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to copy it. I think last week we did 70 feet. I'm going to copy this. It's a 40-foot building. I'm going to copy this 100. Let's see, 40, 120. I'm going to copy this 150 feet to the east. So that gives me plenty of room on the left-hand side when I make my west elevation to rotate, do what I need to. So I'm going to move myself over to construction lines. Actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and select all of the dimensions. And if you use your right selection tool, so if you grab it from the right-hand side going left, as long as you just touch one of those dimensions, they'll select. So you can be on the outside, just go right to left, and just grab all of these dimensions in a couple grabs. And go ahead and hit that delete button, and we'll be left with just our floor plan. All right. So now let's go ahead and move over to the construction layer. And just because I like to give myself a little bit of working room, I always just give myself 10 feet. So I go 10 feet to the north, and then I'm going to draw a line that is, I'll just draw 10 feet to the west. And this is going to be the elevation or grade level of my elevation view. So now that I've drawn where I want to start this, knowing it's that corner, I'm going to move back over to exterior walls and draw a polyline. And you could draw a line and you could draw a polyline. We're not going to be doing any offsets with it. So there's not necessarily an advantage to having a polyline other than the fact that if you grab one, it grabs all segments of it. So I'm going to draw this 40 feet over. And if I wanted to, and I didn't know exactly how wide this was, let's say I didn't know that was 40 feet. I could go ahead and do a construction line from my left-hand side and then a construction line from my right-hand side at 10 feet up. And then now I could just connect the two of them, and that's going to be my 40-foot baseline. So now that I got the 40 feet across, I'm going to draw a line up that's going to go 10 feet tall. I'm going to come back 40 feet as well, and then down 10 feet again. Yes. This is 10 feet away. Yeah. So I just gave a 10-foot construction line. This could be 5, this could be 20. It doesn't matter as long as both sides are the same and you're drawing a flat plane across. What this is going to do is when I delete this later or turn off my construction, it will give it's going to give some space around that, right? So a little bit of working room. We can always move things around if they're too far away. It's a lot harder to move something that's too tight farther away because you got to select the very elements that are, and only the elements that are pertaining to that wall. So like, let's say that wall was, you know, let's say I didn't start it anywhere away and just started drawing it right off of this. It's going to be hard to select all the right lines to space that farther away to begin with. That's why I try to just get 10 feet away from it and then start drawing my elevation.
Wait, what's the length for the vertical construction line?
This is 10. This they're both 10 feet. This
the
is
horizontal 10, one?
40 feet, the same distance as across your, or are you talking this one right here? This is just 10 feet. It's just a direction. It doesn't matter how long this is. This is just giving me a plane for me to draw my story pole on.
Oh, thank you.
So speaking of story poles, let's go ahead and draw them. And I'm going to draw my first one just off this midpoint, and I'll draw it. Let's go 4 foot 6 inches tall. And then last but not least, I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to do this one at 7 foot 6 inches tall. All right. So now that we've got these two lines, we're just going to leave them there and transfer our windows up. So let's move to our window. And now this one I could draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines. Or I can draw one line all the way up. And I can copy this line utilizing my base point and just copy this to every other window intersection. And now that we've got those, we can utilize our same layer, the windows layer that we're on, and draw a line off the story poles all the way across. One line off the bottom one line off the top one, and we now have all of our windows placed. We just need to trim the excess out of there. So what that means is I can use my trim command, and I can go to a space that there isn't a window. So like right here, there's no window, and I'm going to just trim out every green line. This does have a window under it, so I'm going to leave it alone. There's no window here, so I'm going to trim this line out. And then pretty soon you'll see a pattern that you just trim every other line out of here to create these window gaps. And then now that you've got the window placed, we can get rid of the other vertical lines out of here. So trim out the top ones. And you can drag select too to trim. So I can drag to my left and trim everything that cuts across. And there we go. And so trim is pretty easy to use. and it's very efficient. All right. Has everyone got those lines trimmed out of there? Cool. So this one's relatively easy in the fact that we technically don't need to mirror this because the inside and the outside are the same. Okay, the only difference is the outside, we've got a little extra 6 inches, whereas the inside wouldn't have that 6 inches because the wall would constrain it by 6 inches on each side. So the full length on the inside would only be 39 feet, whereas it's 40 feet on the outside, right? So this one in particular, there's nothing that's making it need to be a certain direction. So let's make that change and make it have to do something specific. So what I want to do is I want to take this right window. So the fourth window over. So the 3-foot window. And I want to take this and I want to delete it. I want to get rid of that window on the elevation and the plan view. And now when we look at this, this no longer is the correct exterior elevation, right? Because if I was looking at it from the exterior, I'd have 2 windows on my left and 3 on the right. And right now we've got 3 on the left and 2 on the right. So super easy fix, okay? All we need to do is mirror it, okay? So last time we used rotations for some things. We're not going to rotate this because if we rotated it, what it's going to do is flip the whole thing upside down, right? It's going to put a 4.5-foot gap from my ceiling to the top of my window and a 2.5-foot gap from the bottom to the top of the window, right? Whereas that's not necessarily how this is laid out, okay? So what I want to do is I want to click and drag with my, so click to the top left, and we're not going to hold, you just click once, and then we're going to drag to the bottom right of this elevation, and that's going to select everything that is inclusive to that square. Again, if we were to drag from the right to the left, it's going to grab everything that box touches. If I grab from the left to the right, it's going to grab only what is completely inclusive, right? So you don't see it grabbing that line, the vertical line of the window, until I'm all the way down to the bottom. And now, since that whole window is included, now it will grab it, okay? Typically, I always use a right to left, sorry, a left to right selection. Very few times where I use the right to left to just grab something, okay? And what we want to do now is just mirror this. Okay, so now that it's selected, I can type in mirror in my command line. It's going to say specify the first point of the mirror line. So I'm going to specify the right-hand side bottom as my first point and the right-hand side top as my second point. Now it's going to say, do you want to erase the source object? Yes or no? And I want it to erase it. So I say yes. Okay. And now I'm left with an elevation that is in the correct orientation, just 40 feet displaced, right? Because we mirrored it around the right-hand side. So what do we need to do to get this back?
Move.
Mirror? No,
Move.
we don't want to mirror it. We want to move it back, right? It's already in the right orientation. We just want to move this from this endpoint here back to the left endpoint. And now we've got this looking like an exterior elevation based on what we're seeing here as the windows, right? If you oriented yourself inside, this would be backwards. If you orient yourself outside looking in, this is now correct, okay? So what's one thing that we can do to this to make it more easily appear as an exterior elevation? Because right now it's just showing that it's blank, right?
You use hatching on it.
There we go. Let's use some hatching. Okay, so let's go up here.
Stucco.
Let's go up here to the hatch feature. It's under our draw command. And under the home, it's actually also in, I think it's only there in this one. It's right here under draw and hatching, this little square with the diagonal lines in it. You can also just type in hatch on your keyboard and it'll pull up the hatching menu that pulls it up along the ribbon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and find something that represents a side of a building, whether it be brick there, or maybe I want to use something that looks more like, and I don't know if they have it. So on this one, let's just go ahead because it's the easiest to depict. Let's just go ahead and utilize this one that says ARB816. So it should be like, I don't know, 2 down. Any of them that have somewhat of this brick pattern, let's use one of those. Okay. All right. So now when I do this, so I can type in hatch, and I want to pick my points. So I want to just click in here, and all I got to do is click one point, and it's going to fill out everything that isn't part of that hatching. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change this over to my exterior wall layer. I don't care if you end up leaving it on windows or something. It should be on exterior walls. Okay, I'm going to add this hatching, choose what I want, and then come over here to click pick points. And if I just click a point anywhere inside of here, as long as it's not internal to the window, it will hatch that entire wall. Okay. And there we go. We now have an exterior elevation of our north wall. Did you say something, Deborah?
Oh, I was mumbling to myself because it worked. Right.
All right.
It worked the first time, not. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the east wall. So same thing as we've done before, and this is how I always start, right? I always want to just give a little bit of gapping. That way I can turn things off and just quickly do something like this, and I could inclusively select that entire wall, right? I'm not playing the game where is this window part of it? Is that because you didn't give a little bit of gap between your plan view and your elevation? So again, I always like to just give 10 feet. So I'll give 10 feet at that one, 10 feet at this bottom, and then I'll just draw my story pole off the top. And once we have our basic construction lines, we can now go ahead and draw our polyline, which is going to be on exterior walls. And I'm just going to draw this straight across from point to point, 20 feet, draw it 10 feet in elevation, 20 feet back across, and then 10 feet back down, quote unquote. So just like we did before, I'm going to go ahead and start over here. And we're just going to assume all the windows are the same height in this. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and assume that all windows that are on the north and the south sides are going to follow this little 4 foot. And I'll throw a couple dimensions here real quick. This 4'6" bottom, and then this 7'6" top. Okay, so that's going to be for the north and the south wall. East and west, we're going to make these things some big old windows. Okay, so I want to do my bottom of my sill at 3 feet and my top of my sill at 8 foot. Top of my window at 8'6". Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and just because I drew these on the windows layer, I'm going to move these over to construction so they're on the right layer. So once we've got our story pole heights, we can go ahead. And last but not least, I'm going to make one more story pole height. And I'm just going to put it on the door layer real quick just because it's going to be easier. And I'm going to put 7 feet high. And then I'm just going to move this one 2 feet away, just so it's not on top of the other line. All right, so that's going to give us our height for our door. Okay. So let's go ahead and transfer our window verticals up.
Hey, sorry, Graham.
Yeah.
Was that story pole the same height as the other one?
It is not.
4'6". I missed the.
Yeah. That's fine. Let me put some dimensions on here for you. So this first one is going to be 3 feet. The last one is going to be 8'6", and I'm going to put both of these on the window layer. And then this last one here is going to be 7 feet, and that's going to be on the door. And again, this is just so I can show you easily what layer it should be on.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we transferred our 2 verticals for our window. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for our door. And we can utilize our door layer to do that. So I'll come through here. Oh, not dimension it. Let's draw a line off it. And then same thing off the other side of the door. So we now have all of our verticals that we need. We now just need to draw lines across where our story pole goes. So I'm going to leave us on the door layer and draw my door line. So off the red line here, come draw the top of the door. And then I'm going to move back over to the window layer and I will draw the bottom of the window and the top of the window. And I know right now it probably kind of looks a little bit messy, but as soon as you start trimming some items out, it makes it a lot easier. So I'll trim out everything that's going between my 2 elevations. I'm going to trim out the bottom of this window, the top of that window, the left edge of it, and the right edge of it. And I know that I've got no more windows, so I can go ahead and just delete all the rest of my green lines. And then now that I've got my window set, I can go ahead and use this last line as the top of my door. So delete the ones I don't need, the extra vertical I don't need, and those couple horizontals. We now have a nice looking exterior. All right. So what else are we going to need to do to this guy?
Rotate?
Rotate it. Okay. If we rotate it and we just rotate it to the left, is that going to solve what we want to solve?
No, you gotta mirror it first and then rotate it.
Mirror and rotate, correct. Yep. So on the other one where we were doing the interior, right? Just a rotate would have been fine on that, right? But since we're doing the exterior, we need to mirror it and rotate it. Okay, so I'm going to select all of this, use my mirror command, and mirror from the right bottom to the right top. And I'm going to delete the source object. Yes. Now that I've got this guy, I can take this and I can rotate it from this bottom corner. And I can rotate that 90 degrees to the right. And then last but not least, we can take this whole thing and move it back to the bottom left construction line. And we now have an orientation that looks like we're looking from the outside looking in. These dimensions don't really mean anything to us anymore. So if you want to go ahead and get rid of these lines, you can do so. Okay, again, construction lines and anything that's a story pole is always just going to be there for temporary use until you're done with it. Okay, so you can leave it there if you want. Since I'm not going to use it again, like since this one, it makes sense to leave it here because the orientation still utilizes that dimension. Since we rotated this, these no longer mean anything to us. I like to just get rid of stuff that doesn't apply anymore. Okay. And then last but not least, what do we need to do to this to make it look like the other one?
Put in the hatching.
Put in the hatching. Perfect. So let's go to hatching. It should still be on that pattern. If I pick the point, I'm just going to go ahead and pick that interior point and make sure that it is on the right layer. So I'm going to move back over to exterior walls and rehatch that. And there we go. So that's 2. So we got 2 more to do. So same thing as before, right? We're going to start with that construction line on the construction layer, and we're just going to draw it down 10 feet away. I typically like to use my left-hand side, but it doesn't matter. Left-hand side looking at the orientation when it flips. So it doesn't matter where we start our story pole as long as it's at the same elevation line that the base point of our elevation is going to be. So next, we're going to do our interior wall. Line across 40 feet, 10 feet up, or 10 feet down, I should say, in this strip, right? Because we're doing this whole thing upside down. 40 feet back across, and then give it its 10-foot elevation again. Now, I did utilize some 4'6" and 7'6" story poles earlier, so I can go ahead and utilize, I can copy this line. I can also copy the 7'6" line. If I use the top as my base point, then I can utilize this yellow construction line as my story pole. And I didn't have to draw any new lines. I just used what I already had.
Hey, Graham, what's stopping you from taking those story poles and just put them on the bottom line? So you're just gonna build the whole thing from the bottom up.
Nothing is.
You don't have to rotate or flip anything.
It isn't, but I'm teaching how to draw from the base. So when you draw butterflies, you typically will still draw this out as you would, just because you can draw it the other way. Okay, but I found it makes it a little bit more confusing for people, but they're like, hey, why don't I have to flip this one? Like, why is this different? When I'm drawing interior ones, I don't know. You could do it both ways. If we wanted to, we could draw that story pole right here. So we could grab the same thing if you want to, and we could copy this down from here to here. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And then we don't have to. Sure, we can do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, see what that does is that prevents you from having to not all the views are gonna have to be reversed. It's the one on the bottom that you're working on right now should stay true with
Correct.
building it from the ground up. Yeah.
It will. Correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. So we can go ahead and utilize the same thing that we did, knowing that this is the top is right here and the bottom's right here, since we are looking at it. If you're standing at this orientation, looking at that wall, it's the same as if we were standing here looking straight at this wall. So everything is in true orientation. Again, I typically build these upside down because I build them all from the center out. But I like this. It's fine. It's another way to do it. So let's go ahead and transfer our lines. So I'm going to transfer that window, this window, that window, and this one. And then I'm going to transfer my two doors, two verticals of the door. And then now this one, we do need to add another line in here because on this side, we didn't have a door and this side we do. Okay, so I'm going to draw one more line and I'll just draw it off of here somewhere. And I'm just going to draw the 7 foot up. Okay, and then I'll dimension it. And 7 foot. All right. And then last but not least, we can go ahead and just take these. And since we copied them down, we can actually just extend that out. Because that vertical line or the horizontal line was already there. And last but not least, we'll be on the door layer and draw our door line. And then it's just left to trim it up. So trim everything outside of the windows. Trim the vertical portions of the window up top and bottom. And trim out the door. And then you can utilize just a click and drag to your left to grab all of the lines between the plan view and the elevation. And then last but not least, all we need to do is throw some hatching on it. Oh, and I want to be on the right layer. It says by layer, but let's be on the actual exterior wall layer and then hatch it. All right. And we've got one wall left. So we'll just make our way through the last wall. Again, drawing construction lines that are 10 feet out. Move myself over to my construction layer. And then I can draw a base point for my story pole. And we can start drawing the wall. So exterior wall layer, draw my baseline across 20 feet across that, 10 feet, 20 feet back, and then 10 feet. And then on this one, we've got 3 different heights that we want. So we want to go ahead and draw a line. At 3 feet, line at 8 foot 6 inches, and then a line, I just had one line here at 7 feet, and then I just moved that down so they weren't overlapping each other. All right, and then I'll throw a few dimensions on these. Let's change those to the window layer. Three foot on that one. 7 foot on this one. And 8 foot 6 on that one. And I will move those over to the appropriate layers that they belong to. Windows, and then both of these are going to be door. All right. So last but not least, we just need to transfer the window and the door up, or I should say left in this instance. So I'll go over to Windows and draw my line. And then change this over to my door. Draw my door verticals. And then last but not least, a couple lines off the story pole to give our horizontals for our window and our door. Change this over to doors and draw my last one. And once you've got all your lines drawn, we can come back and use our trim command and trim out all of the parts that we don't need. There we go. Something like that. And this one, we're going to need to do the same process as we did on the east wall. We're going to need to mirror it and then rotate it. Because if we did a straight rotate, it would look like you're looking from the inside, or it would be upside down. Okay, so we're going to take this whole thing, mirror it about the left-hand side. Erase source object, yes. And then I'm going to use the bottom left corner as my base point for my rotation. Rotate it 90 degrees to the left. And then I can move the whole thing back over to the base point where my construction line started. Get rid of dimensions that are no longer valid. And then last but not least, we can go ahead and, okay, so we want to be on that, make sure I'm on that exterior wall layer. And there we go. So last but not least, let's go ahead and throw in dimensions for our vertical windows. So stuff down on the top and the bottom, we've already got that dimension in there with the story pole. So you can go ahead and just leave that for right now. We do need a dimension for the top and the bottom window on the left and sorry, the east and the west elevations. And I can get that by just giving an 8'6" and a 3-footer off that window and then just making them, again, you don't need to make it on the Windows layer. I'll give the same thing for the one over here. And then last but not least, what do we need some dimensions of? What are we missing on here?
Doors.
Because our plan view over here could tell us where everything is in our X and Y direction, right? So we don't need to necessarily have all these dimensions again. Okay, we can copy them over here. That's fine. I'm not requiring it for now. I like this clean like this, but we're missing one dimension from both of these drawings. What might that be? I'll give you a hint. It's shown.
The
The
length of
dimension
the
is
building?
shown in the south view, but it's not in your east or your west.
Oh, your 10-foot height.
Distance from where? The corner?
Your 10-foot height.
So,
you're
so the
not showing.
height of the door is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're missing, right? We're missing the height of this door in the east and the west, because what you can't do is you can't assume that things are the same dimension as they are in another view unless that's specified, right? If you saw that said all doors at 7 feet high, and then you saw one of them with the 7-foot mark, you could infer that the rest of them are all going to be 7. There's not a note on here telling you that. You could kind of see where 8'6" is. Maybe you could kind of, yeah, that's about 7-ish, but you don't know, right? We want to dictate it. We want to show you that it's 7. So let's go ahead. And just because it's the same on both sides doesn't mean that that door is going to be the same on both sides, right? So go ahead and dimension the 7-foot door on the left, on the west view, and the 7-foot tall door on the east view. All right. So any questions on this? We kind of got through this a little quicker than I anticipated, which is great. I don't think that we need to spend time dimensioning things again. We already know how to do that. In our final, and when we turn in our final projects, which I will introduce next week, we will look at dimensioning and all that and what we want to see for the layout. But at this point, I think just giving me the vertical dimensions on your elevations is good enough, because all of your horizontal dimensions should be shown on your original plan view. Okay. Last but not least, what do I like to do to clean this up? Either erase them or just turn off the layer, right? Okay, and now that view right there has. Now that the one thing that's kind of an issue, if you dimension off a construction line and you erase it, so this 4'6" and this 7'6" dimension now, because I utilized that construction line originally, we built the story pole and I didn't redimension it. I just utilized the dimensions from the story pole. When I remove that construction line, the base is lost. Okay. Whereas over here, I went and dimensioned it from the actual bottom line here. So when I turn the construction lines off, I still have base points for both of these. Okay. It's not the end of the world right now, but moving forward, when you do dimensions, you want to utilize for a final drawing, you want to utilize non-construction lines for your dimensioning. That way, when you turn them off, your dimensions don't. Like if I turn off my construction lines in Revit, which is this lovely program, If I turned off one of these lines and it was dimension to something, that dimension would just go away. There'd be nothing there for it to dimension. So it would be like, what am I doing? So like if I had real quick, let's just do, oh, what is it on branch light?
So what is that, a data center?
I don't have lines turned on here. I'll just do this. So if I draw a conduit from here to here, what is it doing? Offset at 10 feet. I don't know. It's not letting me do things. Doesn't matter. The point is, if I delete one of the objects that it was dimensioning, that dimension's going to go with it. There's no way for it to know what it did, where it came from. With AutoCAD, it still kind of gives you this trail of where the line used to be to dimension to, just because that's the bottom of the dimension, and it just stays there. But it doesn't really associate to anything anymore since that's gone. But the nice thing is the dimension will stay for you. It just doesn't have a bottom anymore. So maybe you need to come in here and just put yourself on the Windows layer and type in line and maybe just draw a line out here, right? And look, now you've got something that looks like it is coming off that bottom. Okay. Any questions on tonight's tutorial? I know it's kind of the same as we did last week, but remember, everything is being flipped. So on your final projects, I'm going to have you provide both interior and exterior elevations. So the biggest thing is just realizing where you are and what you need to do to get to the orientation that you're going to end up at, right? So if you're looking from the inside, what do I need to do to mirror or rotate this to get the bottom of my wall at the bottom in my elevation view, right? So stuff that we can definitely work on and we'll continue to work on together. But this pretty much wraps up all the new material that you're going to learn for this class. So everything now is pretty much just application of what we've learned. Okay. So it's going to be drawing floor plans. We're going to be drawing these elevation views. You're going to have interior, exterior. We're going to be utilizing some blocks that'll help you bring in. Okay. But for the most part, there's not going to be a whole lot of new content, maybe just refinement of some content, maybe showing you a little bit better way to put something on a sheet or draw or, get a viewport on a sheet or something, right? I'm going to help you put together your projects. Okay. So the final projects, I'm not going to go through them until next week, but ultimately just as a 10,000 foot level, I'm going to have you pick a building or a building of your choice. So maybe it's the house that you live in or the apartment you live in. Maybe it is, maybe it's an office space where you work, or maybe it's something that you're familiar with, okay? That you could physically go and take some dimensions with a tape measure, right? So what we're trying to do is take an area and put together a basic set of plans. So we're going to have a floor plan view. We're going to have elevation views. We're going to have section cuts or elevation cuts, right? We're going to have tags. You're going to have your rooms labeled, all of that. So ultimately, and most importantly, dimension, right? I need to be able to take your drawing that you turn in and be able to build it off of it, right? I can't, if you were to just turn in something with all the walls and windows there and you've got all the views, but there's no text, no annotation, how am I going to build this thing, right? I don't know what anything is, right? I don't know how wide that window is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what you're trying to portray. So that's the biggest thing is we went through how to make different text sizes, how to make different dimension styles and sizes. Okay. So utilizing text is a huge portion that definitely kind of has been overlooked in the past that I want to kind of make sure that is a focus, that if you're putting in a room, I want to know what that room is. Put a text in there that says it's a kitchen, right? Don't make me assume that this is a bonus living room or a bonus bedroom or whatever. Just because it has a bed in it, it's probably an office. I don't know, right? So we want to make sure that you're labeling things. Yeah, and it's easy, okay? It's not something that's meant to scare you. It's something that's just meant so you can take the skills you've learned and apply them to something that is useful for your life. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns?
Is it just going to be one floor or story, I guess? Or
And realistically, the final is pretty fun. I mean, most people enjoy it's something now that actually you get out of it what you put in, right? So if you want to do something and really, take a tape measure, take a piece of paper, go sketch out the house that you're living in. Okay. When you're done with this, you'll have a full set of plans for your house. When you're done with that, we could take that and utilize it and figure out what the surface area of your wall is. So we can figure out how much paint to order when you repaint your house, right? There's all types of applications for this down the road. If you do a good job with the measurements, you will get something back, right? So if you're really sloppy and you think it's 25 feet and you're like, yeah, it's close enough. Am I judging that? Do I know? No. But is it really going to be useful down the road if you actually wanted to use it for something? Probably not, right? So the better your dimensions are for whatever dwelling or location you are going to draw up, the better your outcome is going to be down the road if you ever want to use it again. And we've seen this. I've already seen multiple students take their project, and I'll get an email 6 months later that say, I use this, and we mostly from my Revit class, but I've had two from AutoCAD from last fall, and it was I can't believe how cool this is because now I'm they needed to redo the flooring in their kitchen in just their kitchen, right? They already had the takeoff. They looked at their plans, 114 square feet in their kitchen right there. Like they didn't even have to do anything. It was all just sitting there ready for them because they built a quote unquote room and they assigned it an area and it calculated what the area was. So, and it was a kitchen with like a rounded kind of an edge to it where this carpet came in. So it wasn't like it was something that you could easily say this is 4x8 plus this little, it's like a pie piece, right? So then you got to get into trying to figure out how to get circles and how to get angles of a circle and all that. Well, Revit just did it for them, right? Because they told it that was the area. So what I'm getting at is the more time and value you put into this, the more value you get out of it. Okay. But it's fun. It's nothing that's meant to be hard. Most people do really well on it. The biggest thing is just turning in something that's complete, right? That gives me a full picture. You can model everything you want, but if I don't know how to build it or how big things are, I really can't even pass you. Like it's 8. I guess it would be a pass. You would get a 12 out of 20, maybe if everything was there, but not dimensions but like that's a terrible grade, right? 12 out of 20 is not, that's a D, that's 60%. Like we need to be able to understand what's going on. So, like I said, it's simple. It'll be pretty painless. You're gonna have, so this is week 7. It's due week 11, which means week 8, 9, and 10. So I'm gonna introduce this at the beginning of class next week. And 8, 9, and 10, the next 3 labs are all work time for you to work on it. We'll stop for some instruction, maybe getting you a view on a sheet or doing something, right? But it's all going to be about time for you to work on it, ask me questions. And then week 11, which is 4 weeks from now, the final's not due until the end of that class. So you have 4 labs with me to work on your final in class. So that's 8 hours of time with me. If you utilize office hours, that could be 12, right? So there's plenty of time coming up to work on it. I'm not thinking that you need to do a ton outside. 20 hours total on a project is like above and beyond. You probably can get it complete in about 15, 16. If you buckled down and you knew what you were doing from the beginning, you could probably bust it out 2 or 3, realistically. Okay. And the more in depth you get, it's not going to increase your score necessarily, right? So if you spend all this time getting super detailed on this one elevation, but you don't have time to do anything else, you got to weigh that against other things. I'm not looking for a masterpiece by any means. What I'm looking for is basic construction documents that I can look at it within 60 seconds of looking at all the views. I can understand what's going on and be able to virtually, okay, yeah, I could frame this. I need to order some 4x5 windows. I need to order 3 doors. I need to, I can do a basic takeoff, right? So that's pretty much what's coming up. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. The next couple of classes are just more, you get to do what you're interested in, kind of. And I think you start to really develop your skills in the next few classes. We've gone through them. Now you're going to be thinking for yourself and not following a leader necessarily, but you know all the commands that we need to do. We know how to use them. And I'm here for questions, right? So if you're stuck on something, you got a question on something, speak up. That's what the next 4 weeks are for, is for me to help you. Okay? Yes.
Where are you looking at on this set? Why do you see 2 windows on the left side and 3 on this?
Because all of these are exterior elevations. So you're outside of the building looking towards the center. That's what all of these, that's why they have brick on the outside, right? Because they're all outside facing in, right? Last week we did inside facing out. For interior elevations, these are now all outside facing in. That make sense?
Wouldn't you have 2 windows on this side?
No. You would have 2 windows on the left. Okay. Right? Just like on this one, the door is on the right and the door is on the left on this one, right? We're looking from that outside facing in. And then this bottom one is just the straight because we didn't have to do anything to the orientation. All right. Well, thank you for your time tonight. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this right here of the 4 elevations with the center plan view. I don't care if they've all got dimensions on it. I'm just looking for that content on there. Okay. And then let's go ahead and submit that under tonight's assignment. And let me make sure that we have a place for you to put it. 514. Let me make one. Oh, nope. There is one right there. 514 classwork. There's already one for you. Cool. And then if you need it, if you're still working on something the picture of the AutoCAD background is also on week 7's modules, right? We're at their week 7 in class assignment.
Graham, do you want construction lines on or off?
So are we good dead out or? Hey, Graham? Oh, okay.
Mr. Thompson,
Thank you. Where's my Zoom thing? Come on. Did you just raise a hand, Anna?
yeah. Hello?
If there's anyone there with a question, I'm still here for a little bit.
How do I email this to myself?
Save it on your desktop and email it to yourself.
Oh, if you show me how to do it before.
Okay.
That's-
Yeah, that's the file. I don't know. I just had you open the email. Thank you. Hello.
So how big, I'm sorry, wasn't paying attention. For our final, how much space do we need to design and
Oh, it doesn't matter. There's no size requirement.
one flat level?
Hey, Graham.
How in detail do you want to retrieve?
Huh?
How in detail do you want to retrieve?
I don't care about framing. I just need to know where windows and doors go. So that way I can take care of how I want to space my studs later, right? I know. No, I'm not asking for a framing plan, is what I'm getting at. Yep. Nope.
Graham,
Plan
I have a
view,
question.
elevation views, but we're not looking for like a framing plan with showing studs on centers of 16s or, you know, whatever it may be.
Hello.
Interior walls?
Interior walls in your plan view, but we don't necessarily need an interior wall. I do want interior elevations of like an exterior wall, like we did last week. But we don't need to necessarily make an interior, just like an interior wall elevation. Just because it's hard, like there's too many steps to do it. We have to pull that out and then we can do it, not a problem, but it's not what I'm looking for.
Graham. Hello.
20 hours. Seems like a lot.
Are you there, Ahmed?
Yes.
I can't hear
just-
you.
Sorry. I just have a question about week 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see my grade is 0.